Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GMA funder community. This is I'm Susan Berry. I'm CEO of GMA, and this is our third session of our funder community, and it will prove to be an exciting one. The feedback we've gotten so far has been really positive, and what we've tried to do in these sessions is offer you different perspectives. And today, I don't even want to say that it's a government perspective so much as it's a direct experience that we've had close to home with guaranteed income. And, we think about research and where we can get information from throughout the country and throughout the world when there's really success happening right next door in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So we're very excited about this direct income program and its focus for us at GMA and for the funder community on 17 to 25-year-olds. So we're going to follow the same format we followed, hearing from a couple of leaders and a participant in the program as well. So we thank you, the three of you, for your time. And I thank all the funders and our staff for your continued persistence and interest in this program. It seems like since the day we started, I've heard nothing but good things about guaranteed income, and it's in the paper and it's here and there. And I feel like this has been a great learning opportunity. So we'll hear about what's happening in Cambridge, and I know Heidi is going to spend some time talking about organizations we might work with. For those of you who haven't been on the call before, we're not going to do introductions again today. Is there anyone who hasn't been on a call before? No. Rachel Rifkin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Rachel. I work at GMA. I'm a senior program officer, and I'm interested to hear the discussion.
All right, thank you. I'm going to please make sure your name is on the screen. And if your technology isn't cooperating, Anna will be on it. And thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to turn it over to Heidi.
Great. Thank you, Susan. I'm Heidi Heinlein. I'm a senior program officer at GMA and the coordinator of the 1725 Fund. Thank you for being here. We're just thrilled with how this whole process is going. We've heard a lot of great comments. Susan mentioned it, but a lot of positive feedback from the funders. And I know this session is going to be just as informative and energizing, and we're really looking forward to it. Our team at GMA is grateful to welcome three amazing speakers who have deep experience in this field. It's going to be informal, so feel free to put any questions you have in the chat section, and we will try to get to everything. We will be hearing from Geeta Pradhan, president of Cambridge Community Foundation, City Councillor Sambul Siddiqui, who has served 2 terms as the mayor of Cambridge and is a member of the Mayors for Guaranteed Income. And we have the pleasure of hearing from Lachelle Thompson, who will be sharing her experience as a participant of Cambridge Rise and also as a staff member at Cambridge Economic Opportunity Committee. And I know there was other things on your list, but she's a very, very busy person. After our guests speak, there'll be some time for Q&A. And then at around 11:45, we're going to move to a funders only discussion, and we'll be selecting 3 or 4 organizations to be considered for potential for grant recipients, and more on this later. But it is now my pleasure to introduce Geeta Pradhan. Geeta is the president of the Cambridge Community Foundation. She's a deep understanding of philanthropy, urban planning, and economic development. Geeta is a key player in supporting both the pilot Cambridge Rise and Rise Up. Geeta was the first person that we reached out to when we decided to do this work on guaranteed income, and she has been steadfast in her support since that very first call. Thank you, and all yours, Geeta.
Right. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. And I have to start by saying congratulations for being bold enough to enter into this very new space, or a relatively new space in some ways, and a very, very old space in some ways. The concept of guaranteed income is age-old. I'm going to try to be very efficient with our conversation. So we've tried to structure this conversation in 2 parts. In the first part, we'll speak about the philanthropically funded pilot called Cambridge Rise, which was for 130 single caretaker households, which served as the proof of concept. And then we will speak in the second part, we'll speak to Rise Up Cambridge, the $22 million government-funded expansion currently supporting 1,922 families. So I will begin with a brief overview and context, following which my dear friend and former mayor, Sumbul Siddiqui, will add her perspective. Sumbul is currently in her fourth term on the Cambridge City Council. As Heidi mentioned, she previously served 2 terms as mayor. Sumbul immigrated to the United States at the tender age of 2 from Karachi, Pakistan. She was raised in Cambridge affordable housing and attended the Cambridge Public Schools, where she co-founded the Cambridge Youth Council, now in its 19th year. So her activism is age-old as well. For the work she did in the Cambridge Youth Council, she earned the Cambridge Peace and Justice Award in 2006 for her activism. She has a bachelor's degree in public policy from Brown and a JD from Northwestern Pritzker School of Law. Sumbul has done a lot of really wonderful things in Cambridge, but related to this issue, in her first term, she initiated the Guaranteed Basic Income pilot in Cambridge, and in her second term, worked tirelessly to expand the program with government funding and government support. We are also really delighted that Lachelle Thompson has offered to share her story and her on-the-ground expertise and experience of the value of unrestricted cash in helping families meet their goals. Lachelle brings a wealth of knowledge to this conversation and will be speaking from a number of great perspectives. She is a Rise Up Cambridge participant, but she has also worked with many program participants to help them fill in their application for this program. She's a staff member at CEOC, which is Cambridge's anti-poverty agency, where she works directly with people in poverty who are struggling to make ends meet. And in addition, Lachelle is a member of the National Advisory Committee of AidKit. AidKit is Rise Up Cambridge's partner. They're the platform to deliver monthly cash payments. They work with cities and organizations across the country. So, and I think, as I mentioned in the second part, Sumbul and I are going to tag team on how the pilot effort paved the way for the major expansion, what it took to do that, and what we expect to learn from the evaluation of the program. So, starting with Cambridge Rise and giving you a little bit of the context, I would say that at the simplest level, this pilot program is a really powerful public, nonprofit, philanthropic collaboration story about the urgency of need that we all saw, an opportunity to make a difference, building trusted relationships, and with a vision for change. The pandemic had hit all of us hard, and we were all getting calls for help, both from people who needed help and those who wanted to help. It spoke to the acute urgency of the immediate need that people were feeling in the community. That, combined with the desire to find a more permanent solution to the stress of the exacerbating income inequality in this very high-cost city of Cambridge, became a key driver to test out a trust-based approach that provided unrestricted cash to families with no strings attached. The opportunity arose in the fall of 2020 when Mayor Siddiqui called me with a really exciting opportunity. Mayors for Guaranteed Income was willing to invest $500,000 in cities for guaranteed income projects, but we would need to raise a local match. The pilots, and the idea was that those pilots, which they were trying to make happen in many cities, had to be for at least 100 households and provide funding for 12 months. The pilots would be matched with the gold standard evaluation of a randomized controlled trial. And so would the Cambridge Community Foundation be willing to be a partner? Now, how could you say no to an exciting idea like that and a charming person like our mayor? So we jumped right in, and in under a month, we were able to exceed the $500,000 goal and raised $1.1 million to support 130 single caretaker households with children. To carry out this program, we needed to partner further with people who had on the ground and trusted relationships with the community. You know, the foundation is an intermediary, the city has its own, carries its own burdens. And we needed this trusted partner, and CEOC became that trusted partner, along with Just to Start, a local community development corporation, and Up Together, which provided distributed the monthly payments to families. We had many other partners, which speaks to the complexity of projects like this, including mass law reform and several state and local government agencies who helped to ensure that while people were getting this money, which would increase their income, they were not going to lose their public benefits, which were critical to their ability to survive. So within weeks, we had structured this powerful partnership, providing $500 a month for 18 months to families with children. That pilot concluded in February of 2023, and its evaluation is actually going to be out in February of 2024. But this pilot actually set the stage for a bigger expansion. And the work that you're doing, piloting for 17 to 25-year-olds, actually holds a similar promise. So we're very excited about that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sumbul, who will talk a little more about, the Cambridge Rise, which was the pilot effort first. All yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction and having me. Can you hear me all okay? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So, I'll just add to what Geeta said. I think one thing that has really informed my work is the fact that I grew up low income in Cambridge and in affordable housing. And I saw my parents really struggle, working multiple jobs. They're actually in their 70s and they're still working. And so that really has informed my work and my role as an elected official. And as mayor, I think for me, I wanted to do everything I could to provide financial stability and dignity to residents. And so, especially when the pandemic hit, there was so much need. And we had restarted the Mayor's Disaster Relief Fund. And that fund is usually used for victims involved in fires and so forth. But we reimagined it and we raised money just for that. And we were able to raise about over $5 million in private donations to distribute as direct cash assistance to residents in need. And I remember during that summer, the feedback we were getting from our community was that, people who were receiving the money was that it was such a lifeline. It was one time, but it was such a lifeline. It really helped them get through such a rough patch. And then we kept hearing from people directly about just how impactful it was. And, as the pandemic continued, many community members asked, okay, is there a possibility to get, more funds, more assistance? And so right about that time, I learned about Mayors for Guaranteed Income, which is this network of mayors advocating for a guaranteed income. And it was started by former Mayor Tubbs of Stockton. And so I learned about it and I was like, wow, is this a real thing? And it was real. And, I thought it's one of those things where everything comes together. And as Geeta mentioned, I thought, at that point, okay, who would be the ideal individuals to build a collaborative effort to do this work. And so the Community Foundation quickly became the first partner. And then it was thinking about who else do we ask to be a part of this. And so we did ask many of our nonprofits in the community to get involved. We worked with our affordable housing developers, which was really key because, as mentioned, the benefit mitigation, it was very important for these providers to say, look, we're not going to raise the rent if you get this assistance. And so they were really willing to be a partner. And so really, I felt that at that moment, it was a really unique opportunity for our Cambridge government, really to say to residents, we see you, we recognize that you could use this assistance, and we really trust you to figure out how to best use that money, and I think that was a game changer, because how individuals view the government, do they trust the government? Usually there's just so many hurdles that people who are low income you're required to fill this out, you're required to show this. It's really demeaning. And I think this program, Cambridge Rise, how we started it, building this cross sector coalition of donors, everything from individuals to, our big philanthropic foundations, to our universities. We were able to really come together and really develop a really unique model. And so that kind of partnership really, it was during the pandemic. We're all on Zoom. It took several, months, but it quickly came together, and we were able to launch the first payments in that September of that year. And we partnered with the Pens Guaranteed Income in that process. And I think that how we came together in that moment, we really reflected on the community, and I think we kept the community really top of mind. And I think that's how then we were able to really quickly establish and go to this expansion. So I'll stop there, but that's a little bit about my role in bringing the pilot together. And we learned so much from doing that work, and it really did inform the future work. Thank you.
So with that, let's move to Lichelle. Lichelle has I think it's the on-the-ground experience that is so critical, and knowing that whatever we are doing for any program actually has to be driven not just from a top-down approach, but a ground-up approach. And, I think Lichelle actually represents that ground-up approach for us, and the place where we want to make sure that this program builds the capacity in our community to push change that is needed. So Lichelle, all yours.
Hi, everybody. So I just wanted to start off by saying, it's a pleasure to be able to sit here and share my experience with Rise Up. And, my personal experience to start off with was, it was great. I heard about the pilot program, and as an advocate in Cambridge, I'm like, this is really good, and me being an advocate, I'm like, I wanted to get it out there to families who I felt needed it more than I did, because it was a pilot. So I would, have applicants, apply and things like that. But then when it was brought up as anybody in Cambridge could apply as long as you met the criteria, I'm like, this is good. And then that's when I was like, maybe I should apply. I didn't want to take a spot from somebody who, I think could use it more than I could, even though I was still considered low income. I really like the Rise Up program, because somebody like me, I work every day, and I still struggle to make ends meet, especially living in Cambridge. I lived in Cambridge my whole life, and me being 39 years old now, it's like everything has changed. I remember going from knowing everybody on the block, to not knowing anybody, and all these big corporations and, things like that. So it's like kind of like, wow, I love this place. I want to keep my children here, but it's getting to be a bit expensive, and Rise Up, it allowed my family to be able to make ends meet. And when I say by that is, okay, I might have been able to pay my rent and things like that, but with the pandemic that came, I know, funds for rainy days was very essential, but it didn't hit hard on how essential it was until the pandemic actually came, when I had to worry about, okay, do I go to work? I'm afraid to go to work, but what if I lose my job? A lot of people are losing their jobs, and, things like that. Or what if I don't have enough money for toilet paper, or, just basic necessities that Rise Up money assisted with, you know what I mean? Now I can have a little extra money if I need to go to a hotel because, the water breaks or there's a fire, I can have that. So I really, really appreciated that. But then I'm like, I wanted to do more. I wanted to get out in the community. I wanted to help people apply for this. So that's what I did with CEOC. And then I was also granted the opportunity to be on the advisory committee where we would go in and discuss difficulties with people applying, like to see like what did we see in certain language, you know what I mean, that had barriers. We had people who had their children apply for the applications that we didn't know of, and they would come up like, I want to know, you know, my application status, and but like you were denied because you clicked that they thought that college, them going, a regular child going to a 4-year college was graduate school. So they clicked that. So they automatically was, you know what I mean, not denied. So I'm bringing these difficulties to the advisory council and letting them know like, okay, we need to figure out how to word this differently. You know what I mean? Because there were other people who could have benefited from this money, but were denied because it wasn't clear in the application or they didn't understand. So, I wore many hats in that, and I'm just really, really thankful because, you know, people like me, to bring it back to my personal experience, you know, some state government assistance I don't apply. I'm like, I'm not eligible for. I remember doing a SNAP application and they gave me $9. I had to go through all these hurdles, provide all this documentation to get $9. And though I was thankful for it, but I'm like, wow, you know what I mean? All that can get me is like a pack of meat or, you know what I'm saying, eggs and some juice. You know what I mean? It's still not helping me with what I need. And as you know, a 3-bedroom in Cambridge can run you anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. If you're applying for SNAP, they only give you a credit of $600. So it's like, wow, $600, and I'm paying all this amount of money, and I'm still living check to check and making ends meet, and I can't get SNAP benefits. You know what I mean? So Rise Up was that program that helped me get those extra things that I needed. So I was definitely appreciative. So um, that's my experience.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lachelle. You know, I think one of the key things in what Lachelle talked about, which I think really touched my heart, was the resilience and the generosity that we saw in the community. Her mention that she didn't apply for the first round of funding because she felt that there were others who needed it more than she did. And we heard a lot about, we heard a lot of that. We also heard a lot about, and I think, Sumba's going to talk some more about this as we went into the second phase is, we continue to hear a lot about the fact that what people needed was more cash. That's what they really needed. They just did not have enough cash to make ends meet, despite the public benefits that they had, and that we needed to be very, very mindful in anything that we do that does not think of guaranteed cash as the magic answer without the public benefit support that is being provided. The foundation actually did analysis of the population that qualified for the program, for the expansion program. And what we found was that the cost of living in Cambridge is 5 times the federal poverty level. So the federal poverty level for a family of 4 is 30,000. What it costs to live in Cambridge is 130,000 for a family of 4. And in a very high cost city, we found that 40% of our population is actually not able to afford to live in Cambridge. And we sort of need to keep those things in mind as we develop any of these programs, of what will it take and what do we need to make sure is not lost. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Sumbul to talk a little bit about the expansion, which used public funding to expand. And the last thing I'll say is that I think what we felt really excited about from a philanthropic perspective was that philanthropy invested in a pilot that created a proof of concept, which then was able to leverage public funds for the expansion. So with that, Sumbul.
Sure. So this expansion, Rise Up Cambridge, the cash payments for families with kids was the official kind of our tagline. And as has been mentioned, it's a $22 million commitment from the city, managed in partnership with our community foundation, using funds received by the city from the Federal American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA for short. And so I think when the pilot was ongoing, even in the kind of as I started my new term in 2022, we had many conversations that even just as the pilot started and the money was dispersed, what happens next and how? And we knew that we were getting this ARPA money. And so Geeta and I, and several others, we said this would be a really lost opportunity not to use some of the funding that the city is getting to expand. And so the expansion, just it happening took a long time. It took it was a much bigger scale. So as you can imagine, there was much more involved, but we knew we wanted to help more individuals. And so as we figured out the eligibility, we for the 130 single caretakers, we knew that there were many more who were eligible, and we then wanted to focus on a population, and we did a lot of work on how to kind of think about eligibility and looked at different data. And what we came up with was we wanted to provide direct cash to low-income Cambridge households with children at or under 21 years of age, earning at or below 250% of the federal poverty guidelines. And so, for a family of two, that's 49,000 and $300. And so we really wanted to focus on kind of the families who were kind of the lowest income in our community. And the process for it was, I think, Geeta, you can fill in anything I've missed, but we really wanted to be intentional about the outreach for the expansion. And there was so much work really done at the onset of figuring out if we are trying to focus on anyone who is eligible, how are we going to actually do that? And we had actually expected about 2,000 applicants to be eligible based on the data. And as has been mentioned, we're now providing payments to almost 19. It's a 1922. So that's 6,450 residents, and so we definitely expanded. And I think the what we're really focused on now, and Geeta, you can talk about the research component of it, and kind of what we're focused on hearing about. I think there is this question that we get a lot, what happens next? Where do you go from here? And so we are constantly thinking about that question. But I think with this Rise Up expansion, it is allowing us to ask some really key questions, and really learn from the past work. But I think there was really a lot of community support around expanding the pilot. I think we really as a city, I think in Cambridge, what I love about it is that we are not afraid to innovate. We're not afraid to lean into our community and use their voices. And so I think the expansion really did bring together many of those components. So I'll stop there, Geeta.
Great, great. So the one thing that I wanted to add is that the pilot had focused on single caretaker households. And during the expansion, one of the things that I think particularly the mayor's office was hearing was from families, even large families, two-parent households, who were struggling. So we tried to push the envelope to the maximum that we could, playing with data all the time to see how many families, like if we went to 200% of the federal poverty line, how many people could we serve? The ARPA federal poverty limit was 300,000. We looked, 300% of the federal poverty line. And we looked at that data and we didn't have enough resources for that. So we backed down to the 250%. But the goal was to try to help every family that was in need, that had children over 21, up to 21, because it was hard. The pilot had focused on children under 18, but here we were looking at children under 21, keeping in mind that there are children who are in college or pursuing post-secondary options, and those families actually needed the support. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that this expansion is the only citywide expansion of its kind in the country. And so which means that it was not a lottery program. It wasn't that, 3,000 people applied who were eligible and only 1922 got in. Every eligible family that applied, and if they met the criteria, they got in. We may have left out a few, but as Symbol mentioned, from the data that we had gathered to how many we did, we actually did a great job in terms of the outreach. So, this, considering the fact that this is the biggest citywide initiative in the country, though there are bigger in terms of numbers, there are others like Seattle, Chicago, LA, San Francisco. Not all of them were lottery programs, and we were the only non-lottery program. So there was a real opportunity to learn from this, to contribute to the GBI conversation in the country. So we are actually investing about $1 million in this research. Again, it's a partnership between the city and the foundation. The city is contributing 500,000, and we are still raising money, but we are committed to the 500,000 to do this. We did a nationwide search for who the right person would be, and we got I think there were about 15 applications that we got from across the country, and we selected MDRC out of New York, which is a social policy and research institution with a tremendous track record in cash assistance program, but also other social programs and other community-based approaches. What we loved about them was that they were very community-centric, they were very equity-centric, and they were a racially diverse group themselves, with a number of people with the lived experience that could actually fit in with the way we were thinking about the research. The key thing that was important to us in the research was that we wanted to understand how greater agency is affected through unrestricted cash. How does it help people move out of poverty? Though I have to say that the issue of poverty is very complex, and I'll speak to that a little bit, after I mention this research, that that is going to take somewhat of an advocacy effort, not just at a local level, but at a national level, to really make sure that we can help people out of poverty. The research will actually use a comparative lens, looking at outcomes in 4 categories. We're looking at financial security, we're looking at economic mobility, we are looking at individual and family well-being, and self-efficacy, or the sense of agency. These 4 categories will actually be looked at across the diversity of participating families, so by race, we have many income levels. We have the people at 50% of the federal poverty line, people at 100%, at 150, 200, all the way up to 250% of the federal poverty line. So we are looking at all of those populations to see how did guaranteed income affect families below poverty and then families above poverty and the sort. Also family type. So we have single parent household, we have 2-parent household, we have multi-generational family households. So it's a very complex set of criteria. But we are also trying to make sure that we look at it not just at a quantitative level, that is, how did people use their money, but also at a qualitative level. And for that, we are, it'll be done through surveys, maybe financial diaries, storytelling, so different approaches to be able to really understand the mind shift that happens, or how families change, and what is the change that actually happens as a result of this. We know from all of our experiences and knowledge and our partners that different families have different needs and they use the money for different purposes. And so we want to understand all of those aspects in this particular program. I think, as I mentioned early on, we want to make sure that the research that we do and the program that is done, that is currently underway, really leads to building and leaving behind long-term capacity in the community. So it's a very bottom-up, ground-up approach. And we have a 12-person research advisory committee that is guiding and advising MDRC on the kinds of questions to ask, on how to ask those questions. I think Lachelle mentioned things about language, and how how it both comes across and how people read certain things. We also have 3 community research who will be working alongside MDRC. And we are trying to do things like hopefully build out a speakers bureau where we have people like Lachelle, come out and tell their story like the experts that they are. We don't know, we don't have the expertise, but people who are living that issue, who are participating in the program, really know what works, what doesn't work, how they want it to work. And I think I want to point out one other important note in this, which Sumbul mentioned, which was the importance of dignity. We want to make sure that we, are dealing with things in a way that give people the dignity to tell their story in the way they want to tell their story, create the change that they want to create. So this research is going to, we've completed the design phase. It is about ready to launch with some surveys, and we are hoping that every 6 months, we will get some insights from the research so that we don't have to wait for like 2.5 years. But hopefully by mid-February, we should get the findings of the randomized control trial research on the pilot, which we will be able to share with the community more broadly. So with that, I think I'm going to stop and make sure that we have time for questions.
Thank you, Geeta. Thank you, all the speakers, fantastic. So yes, do we have questions for them? I guess I could start with one while people are thinking of their questions, and that's to Lachelle. I'm curious about how people, when they were, first of all, how do they know to come in and get your help on signing up? And, comments they might have made about once they did get the funds.
So we did a lot of outreach in the community. I know the mayor and her office, they did a lot of outreach as well. But then, like they said, we would go to different agencies, and we actually we looked up in the city of Cambridge every store, every daycare, every school, after school, and we targeted these places. And when we went out there before the program even started, and created flyers, explained what it was, and tried to get people, to sign up and just provide that information. We did get some pushback because, when we're reaching out to stores, like, hey, we have this program, we're telling them about it, like it's free money, it's for families, and they're like, free money, you know what I mean? And they're like, oh, I don't know. So some people were like, no, I don't want it. But then, and that's why I said to, some of my colleagues, like, you know what? Over the phone is great, but we need to get out there. They need to see us. They need to see us in our eyes, like we're being honest. Because sometimes when it comes to money, some people are like, whoa, is this a scam? You know what I mean? What it sounds too good to be true. So we did a lot of that. And then when we did get people that started to come in, and they were really eager to learn more, they're like, how I do this, and I have custody of my grandkid, but you know what I mean? Like, how do I prove that? And things like that. They, of course, we were still somewhat in the pandemic. So a lot of the agencies like DTA, SSI, and stuff like that were like taking a long time to get documents. So we had to be creative on how to get the documents. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, well, do you know how to use your phone? Do you know how to go in the portal? You know what I mean? So we did a lot of stuff like that. To like try to assist them. And then, in Cambridge, things travel. So like one family told another family, told another family, told another family, which was really, really good. And I think that, like they said, most of the people that were eligible did apply. But then again, there were some barriers to other families that we weren't able to catch, because you can't catch everything. Like, they didn't come in, maybe they felt embarrassed or whatever, and they would have their children apply for the applications online. And then after the deadline, they're coming in like, I haven't heard nothing. And then when you go in and you look, you're like, wow, you get to see like where the errors were. And you're like, if they would have just came in to us, you know what I mean, and helped us, versus letting their 12 or 13, 14-year-old child do it, they would have been eligible. So, just having to deal with things like that. I don't know if I answered the question.
You definitely did. Looks like Rachel has a question.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm just curious to hear a little bit more if you guys have the information sort of about the research. I think some of those areas you were going to look into about family well-being or even like self-efficacy can be pretty difficult to measure. So just curious, like what those indicators look like.
Yeah, I think, we haven't defined the indicators yet. So those are being defined by the Research Advisory Committee in partnership with the research team, the researchers. I mean, these researchers are very skilled, and I think those will probably be measured not in quantitative terms, but more in narrative. The thing that we wanted to make sure is that we are using the findings from this research to shift the narrative on poverty as well as people in poverty. There's a lot of myth busting that needs to happen. I mean, we've had comments and people sort of reach out and say, why are you giving money to people who are not working? They're lazy, they're going to use this for whatever. There's all of these attitudes. And I think the storytelling is actually really important. And it really, when you combine it with the data of how funds were used, to use it with the resilience of families. We're hoping what it will lift up is the resilience of families, the generosity of families, their attitude towards poverty. I mean, like, we've had people say, like, I don't choose to be poor and I don't want to be poor. But and I think that's where I wanted to mention the two things that the federal poverty levels are ridiculous. A family of 4 living in Cambridge or any other city in the US cannot manage on 30,000 a year anymore. The public benefits that have income limits, so that if you go $1 over the income limit, you lose your public benefit. That's a ridiculous idea because it keeps people stuck in poverty. That wage increase never equals to the loss of what you're getting for your housing subsidy or your childcare subsidy. So something needs to shift at a national level. We are hoping this research will contribute to that.
Great. All right, we are short on time. Is there one more burning question, anyone?
I just wanted to add something that I forgot to say. Was that working with CEOC, when we were doing these applications and things like that, we would come back as a team and be like, okay, how more can we support these families? And all I could think about was scarcity, you know what I mean? And, now they're getting this money, this $500 every month. And, some families, they have financial literacy and were educated with finances, and then a lot weren't, so we wanted to see like how we can help them, get in a better financial situation. So right now what we're doing is we're piecing together a financial literacy course, and we want to target people who have the Rise Up money. They have that extra money coming in, and help them come up with financial goals. Like, okay, do you want to set a goal of, saving maybe $1,500 to $2,000 for a rainy fund, or, something like that. And just seeing where they have to help them, and educate them on how to start saving. Because before, if you're living on DTA funding assistance, you really don't have money to save. You know what I mean? But now you have this extra $500, you know what I mean? You might be able to save $150 to $200 extra every month versus you getting $240 every 2 weeks. Your rent is $90. Then you have your light bill. You might get WIC, but if your kid is like my kid, you know what I mean, they drink plant-based milk, WIC doesn't cover that. One bottle of plant-based milk is $5-6. You might be able to catch it on sale sometimes, but it's expensive. And kids drink 3 to 4 bottles of that a week. So it's just like those little things add up, and just teaching them like what a budget is, what a budget looks like, and then they get to see like what the money that they have versus their expenses, and see like wow. And you look at it and you're like, how could they even save? So this Rise Up money is like so like important to these families, and they're so thankful. But we just want to show them like, okay, like versus we know that maybe your kid always wanted that game and you could never afford it, and now you want to buy it for your kid because you have this extra money. But what about, you know what I mean, God forbid another pandemic happens, and you know what I mean, you got to buy toilet paper, you know what I mean, things like that. Like just trying to teach them, things like that. So that's another thing that we're also working on here at CUC.
We are running short on time, but Lachelle, I just want to quickly share that one of the organizations that we're considering funding this through is Single Stop. There's a whole bunch, but the person there, the executive director, was sharing that what she wants to do is similar to what you're saying, is have a financial literacy program. These are for students at Bunker Hill Community College, and they have to attend the financial literacy once a month, and that's where they get the check, so that they would attend this 1 hour class, and it's on credit and savings and all that stuff. So part of it, I was just curious your opinion on that, because part of it, that is going against unconditional. They have to go to this once a month meeting. But on the other hand, it sounds like a great thing for them to have. I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
So before CEOC, I was at Rosie's Place, which is an agency for mothers and families. And we had a lot of families who would come in for back rent, utility bills. And I started seeing, I'm like, every year they come in for the same thing. You know what I mean? And we give them this quick fix. We put a Band-Aid on it. You know what I'm saying? We help them pay their rent. They get back in standards. But then again, the next year, maybe 6 months down the line, they're back in the same situation. What can we do to help them? And that's where I was like, well, let's start this pilot program of this financial literacy. Like we have them agree to come for the next 6 months, and whatever goal it is it to show that they paid their rent on time and things like that. And then we can, do other things that they needed. So I kind of like that. I understand where it's like, oh, well, there's an obligation to getting this money. But I think that it's an obligation in a good way, because it's actually teaching them something versus dangling, money and things in their face. They're actually learning it, and the end does justify the means. So, I mean, I really like that.
I would just add one little thing very quickly. I know we are out of time, but the one thing that I wanted to add is that actually we've been all thinking about, so what happens next? We will continue the advocacy with the city to make sure that there is some kind of support that happens, but the foundation has actually developed its 5-year strategic plan to look at economic security and social cohesion. How do we bring these things together to be able to support people? And the two aspects that we are looking at in our economic security bucket is that we're looking at safety net idea. We know that the advocacy and policy change may take forever, may never happen. So we are trying to build in things like a food security network or a housing stability sort of a strategy where support can be provided to families without it affecting their income levels. And then adding to that things like financial literacy, education, workforce development, and the like. But I think there's so much to be done in this area, and there's so much that we need to figure out what the right way of doing it is, so that we are not putting restrictions on families ideally, because the circumstances are so different, But there are some low-hanging fruit kind of things like financial literacy. It's to help them. And maybe if you have to add that as a condition, that's not a bad thing,
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ida, Sambul, Lachelle, we are very, very appreciative of your time. Really, big hand for all of you.
And thank you all, and congratulations for doing this work.